Welcome to Educate, Inform, and Challenge. My name is Teresa MacLennan. I'm Executive Director of the Women and Children Shelter of Barrie. We are so glad that you have joined us today. Of course, you know the purpose of our show is to talk about the lives and experiences of women. We talk about women experiencing violence, human trafficking. We talk about women in business and leadership opportunities. And we're just very, very thankful that you come along this journey with us to have these discussions. Before we begin and have a great talk with my wonderful guest today, we want to thank our Indigenous community. Thank you for allowing us to share in this space and to have these conversations on these traditional territories. We thank you. So today I am honored to welcome my guest, Deb James, a very well-known name and face in our community. And we're going to dive into a conversation with Deb just about her journey as a media personality and the work that she's doing right now. And so welcome, Deb. Just great to see you.
Great to see you as well. I'm just thrilled to be able to join you today. So thank you so very much for the invitation.
Thanks, Deb. So how about we start here? How about talking about yourself and your journey in your career as a real backdrop to our conversation today?
Well, I've had an amazing life so far, and hopefully there's lots more to come. But I've had a great journey. I started off at a very small little family farm in Western Ontario, in the middle of nowhere, Lucknow, Ontario. And I decided in high school that, you know what, maybe the radio thing might be something to do. And it was just so far removed from the world I was in. A friend of mine had decided he wanted to go into radio, and I was like, oh, I really didn't know. And I went and looked into it a little bit, and I just said, yeah, I think this is what I want to do. So I started into radio, took community college a couple of years in North Bay, Canadore, and ended up working in a couple of different places. But I was on the East Coast. I went to Corner Brook, Newfoundland. I went to St. John's, Newfoundland, best years of my life. I just so enjoyed the 90s. And then I came back to Ontario, and I was in Owen Sound, I was in Wingham, and I've been in Barrie for the last, I think it's 17 or 18 years. It's been a little while now. And when I came to Barrie, I went to work at Cool. We actually launched or relaunched that radio station. It was Star, and we went to Cool FM, and I started on the morning show with Dale. It was Deb and Dale for a number of years. And that was just an amazing experience as well. Lots of fun, lots of laughs. I went into management after that, and I was a radio manager. And I worked at the Chorus entertainment stations. And then I was working for The Source for a little while. I worked back in radio for a little while, and I've been in non-for-profits and some great charities this last little while. So it's been a twisty-turny kind of journey, but it's been a lot of fun, and it's certainly never dull.
Yeah. So, that is a very well-worn path. You know what I mean in terms of your journey and your career. And I lived in Barrie my whole life, as I have mentioned to our viewers several times, and they know that about me. And your voice, your name, and your face has always been very familiar to me as someone who's lived in Barrie. I feel like I grew up listening to your voice on the radio. Of course, I remember listening to CKBB radio for our viewers who also know that, right? So, but you have been a household name on the radio for a very long time, but that isn't where your career has ended, as we can talk about in a little bit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I also think it's very interesting that in high school, you made the decision that this was the path that you wanted to take. When there's so many young folks who don't know what they want to do, and they have multiple career paths, right? So was it really just this other person, a friend of yours, who said, yeah, I think I'm going to pursue radio, that was the influence to that?
I think I had the same experience as a lot of people. I got most of the way through high school, and I was like, what am I going to do? I thought about a lot of different things, and I still it didn't feel like a fit, didn't feel like I was quite there yet. And when I went, they didn't have co-op programs back then. So I just went to the local radio station. It was in Wingham, Ontario, very small little place, but they happened to have a radio station there. And I went across and just listened in or sat in on a couple shows. And then I was hooked. I'm like, yeah, I could do this. And I think I could really enjoy this and talking and entertaining and that's what I did for over 30 years. It was a great run. Yeah.
So of course, you know that we are a women's agency from a feminist perspective and philosophy. And we really do love to talk about the experiences of women. In particular, we love to talk about women's career paths and some of the barriers that they had to overcome. And we know that barriers are external to us in systemic practices, the way that things just have always been, let's say, a historical perspective. And then, of course, there's our own barriers, our own internal negative dialogue that can happen in our heads. Let's start with talking about if that was an issue for you. Did you ever have your own hurdles or barriers that were not outside of you, but just within your own thinking about your career path and what you had chosen? Was there anything that you had to overcome in terms of the barriers you were creating for yourself?
Well, I grew up very, very, it's funny, you'll find this a lot with radio people. We have to kind of break through a shell, and we have to go and be perky and get out there and host and do all the stuff that you have to do and entertain. But a lot of us have to really break through what we really are, and that takes a lot of years and a lot of really doing it over and over again. I'm a pretty insular person. I'm a pretty much to myself kind of person, every single day. And since I've been out of radio, I've kind of fallen back into that, and it's very comfortable for me. But I don't mind, it's like it's switch. You got to turn on a switch, boom, you're entertaining, and away you go. And it's something you really kind of always, at least I always did. You really have to I won't use struggle or fight, but you're always aware of it, and you're always constantly. It's like that self-talk. It's like, no, I can do this. You can do this. You've done this forever. Just turn the switch and away you go and go. So I just think that was just something that was always inside of me. And you're just always constantly aware of, there's just those little butterflies whenever you crack a microphone or do something in front of people. But when you start to do it after a while, you do find your comfort, at least your rhythm, and you get to a place where, yeah, I can do this. I can do this. I'm good.
Yeah, I can really appreciate what you're saying, because I would describe myself as a very introverted person. Like, I don't like to put myself really out in any kind of a social capacity. Like and then people will question that, because here we are talking on the show or, public speaking. I think that there's pieces of ourselves that we can pull out when we need to or we want to, right? But that may not be the core of who we are. So I really appreciate what you're saying, because on the outside, in the work that you've done and continue to do now, you are sociable, you know what I mean, in a work context, and friendly, energetic, all of those pieces, right? Because that is, what you can pull from yourself when it's needed to be that person. So I'm very appreciative of, it just speaks to how eclectic you are. And
I think there's a little part too, that when you talk so much or you are entertaining so much, you really do cherish then the moments when you can just chill. That's also part of it. It's just like, oh, I enjoy my own space and my time and my own company. It's all good.
I know. I when I come home from work sometimes, and I walk through the door, and my husband greets me at the door, and he may not have been talking to anybody during the day, and he wants to talk to me, and I am really struggling to really just would love some quiet, and I remember being interviewed one time and somebody said to me, what do you really value? And I said, peace and quiet. It was a shock, I think, for that interview, but it is true. And I love that perspective. Yeah, you kind of have to be on as a radio personality.
Right.
You've got to be on all the time, right? And have quick answers and those sorts of things. What a value to have downtime. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. So it's just a joy to talk with you, Deb, and for our viewers, just to know before we head into our first commercial, Deb is our new community development manager here at the Children's Shelter. And we are absolutely so thrilled to have her on our team. It doesn't feel new for me anymore. I don't know about you, Deb. It doesn't feel new, but it just feels like such a great fit. And so we are thrilled to have Deb here at the shelter, and we will share her contact info at the end of the show today in case anybody is interested in knowing about us and wanting to partner with us in any capacity. Deb is the great person to speak with about that. So we are going to circle back and we're going to continue our conversation with Deb. And so Deb, I'm going to give you this to think about, and then when we come back from the commercial, we'll dive back in. We talked a little bit about, just kind of those internal barriers, like you say, getting up the confidence to talk on the radio, all those pieces. I would like to talk about what were some of those external barriers that you experienced, right?
How much time do we have?
Oh, well, you know what? As much time as you like, Deb, because I think, and, I've had so many interviews and conversations with women. We talk about the internal barriers that they kind of have created for themselves, but they are in direct relation to the external barriers that they have historically faced.
They are so connected. It's I totally agree. Yeah.
Exactly, right. So I'd really like to talk to you about that. So you're heading into the profession of becoming a radio personality and manager as well in that media realm. What some of those barriers were that you faced, and what was the perspective of women in that profession as you move through your career. So we invite our viewers to stay with us as we just come along and have this great conversation with Deb. We are going to be right back, and we hope that you'll stay with us. We'll see you soon.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
When an impaired driver killed my brother DJ, my life changed forever. During the pandemic, all of our lives changed, and many of us turned to alcohol and drugs to cope. As life returns to normal, the increase in substance use from COVID has lingered, and some police services report an increase in impaired driving that caused heartbreak and devastation. Now, more than ever, we need your commitment to never drive impaired, and to encourage all of your family and friends to do the same. Together, we can save lives.
What kind of show do you want to see on Rogers TV? What interests you? Log on to rogerstv.com, fill out a show proposal, and tell us about your segment idea. We want to know what you want to see. Rogers TV, only on Rogers.
Welcome back to Educate, Inform, and Challenge. We're having a great discussion with my friend Deb James. We're talking about her career as a radio personality and manager of people. And just when we left off, we were talking about some of the internal barriers that as women we can create for ourselves and maybe not step out and, take hold of all the opportunities that are available to us. But we also want to talk about what might some of those external barriers have been. And so, Deb, I'm love to hear your thoughts on this. Let's start here. When you started off in radio, were there a lot of women in that profession?
No, not at all. I took the radio broadcasting program 1986 to 88. So I am now officially aging myself. But there was like two women in the program, and we both graduated. And I think I'm the only one from that class that hung in and had a pretty good career. And now I've been out for the last couple of years, but they're just, it wasn't what I would say it's not welcoming to women. And I mean, and that wasn't, I'm not pointing fingers, or I'm just, it was just the way it was. And I don't think a lot of women immediately thought of radio, even maybe television, the media arts at all as a, a go-to at that time. So it's gotten way better. There's so many more opportunities now, which is great. But at that time, it was tough. There just wasn't, it was always about the guys, and it was just always that underlying theme that, people, I remember hearing from instructors and from different people in the business. It's like, well, most people just want to listen to men on the air. It's just more aesthetically, pleasing to listen to. And I'm like, really? Okay. But these are some of the things that you would hear. I was actually applied for a job, 1988. I was just out of school, and I was told, oh, we actually don't hire women. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
1988. So that's how things have changed, because obviously you can't say that now, or you shouldn't have said it back then. But you've got HR departments, you've got employment equity. There's so many wonderful things that have come along in the last 30 years. We're still not there yet. I will put that caveat in there as well. But it certainly was. It was just a different time, and just what kind of the sensibilities and the thinking about it at that time was just a little bit different, for sure.
So how did you navigate through that? Because you've had a very long, successful, radio career. And so you had to have been doing something really right to be able to navigate through a male-dominated profession that was very clearly saying at that time, it is a male profession, right? So how did you find your fit and be able to overcome the expectations that they had of you?
I was very fortunate that I did come into radio at a time where personality was really starting to be a driving factor. I think, the 70s, FM radio was fairly new, but it was all very more polished and very stilted. And then as the 80s, we rolled through the 80s, personality became something that was talked about a lot. Being an announcer rather than a personality rather than an announcer. So that was really what I gravitated towards. I was never a perfect announcer. And I learned very young to be just authentic, to be sincere, to have fun with this job. And if I'm throwing out my authentic self, then I'm going to hope people enjoy that. And that's exactly where I landed. And that's how I became successful in every market I ever worked in. I mean, I'll also say that, I did have to work twice as hard being a woman. 9 times out of 10. And you really have to show them that you know your stuff, and you have to be very good at what you do. And that's unfortunate, but that is the way it was. And and it led me through a great career. So it was very difficult some days, and sometimes you really do want to quit because you're like, oh, is it worth it? But I hung in there, and I really did have a wonderful career. So yeah. Yeah.
And, unfortunately, it's true even today that there's certain things that women have to tolerate, in the workplace, especially maybe a male-dominated environment, right? And it's improving and it's getting better. And some things are just not allowed anymore. We're so thankful for that. And it's been the voices of women and men to make that change. Was there kind of in the early days things that you had to tolerate just to be able to maneuver, stay alive, keep your job, all of those pieces, right? Was that a piece of your compromise that you just had to do?
Yes, 100%. I mean, I tried to make the most of a lot of situations. I mentioned earlier about the personality and that type of radio is coming online, which is a really good thing. And then with that came the whole morning show, like the dual personalities. And they decided, oh, well, we need a yin and a yang. We need a male personality. We need a female personality. Unfortunately, in the early days, the female part was only to prop up the guy. And that was my job. It's like, oh, laugh at all his jokes. He's wonderful. He's the guy and drives the show. And again, I've worked with some great people, so I don't ever want to take that away, but I am a great personality too. I have a lot to offer. I can, be part of this dynamic as well. So I just tried to think about it that way. All right, I've got the job, here. I'm not sure exactly why they hired me or how I got hired, but make the most of it and just be diligent and just bring content forward that is, relevant and important and engaging and is part of the conversation. So you just kind of have to really hang in there and really, like I said, know your stuff. But yeah, there were days where you're just like, oh, like, wow, I'm here too, yoo-hoo, Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And good things are happening,
Yes.
and you're right. There's laws and legislation now that protect all of us, that certain behavior should never happen and hopefully doesn't. But I'm also curious, then you had to maneuver through that and were incredibly successful. And then you become like the manager of people. And I can't recall what your official title was, right? When you moved kind of off air radio and then were responsible for the supervision of people, right? And so would that have been a common role for women to take in radio, a position of leadership? So here you start off as a radio personality or an announcer and having to break through those barriers. And now you are moving ahead in terms of leadership positions, right? So how did that work out for you?
It was the same process all over again. So here I start into, it's like, oh, well, let's try management. And I start into it. I would think I was only one of 2 women program directors in all of Chorus Entertainment at the time. And it was exactly the same road. So you just had to know your stuff. And I took lots of, professional development and learning how to be a manager, learning how to lead teams, learning how to engage with everything that goes along with being a manager. And, it was a tough road as well, because like I said, there was a lot of the old boys club going on at that level, but it's a lot better. It really is. I mean, I know that, HR is a really big part of it, and they're having these great conversations now, and they're making sure that, teams are open to having conversations, to making sure that, they feel like they can be heard, if they hear something that they're not supposed to be, hearing or doing, that they feel like you can go to have a conversation with somebody now, and you feel safe having those conversations. That didn't exist 30 years ago. So I'm very happy that that's happening now, because it is a lot easier, better for people heading through the business, for sure.
So I think it might be a really nice time, because you've taken us on this wonderful journey of your career, the challenges that you faced, and how you yourself, with your personality, address those challenges to, have this very successful career. It, I think, is a really nice time for us to talk about that, thinking about March the 8th, which is International Women's Day, because that is the day that we celebrate the journey, successes, opportunities, and drive for equality for women. So I'm just wondering, Deb, if you want to take a couple of minutes to talk about what we are doing on March the 8th to celebrate women such as yourself. Talk about what our events are that we have for that day.
It's a real celebration, and we are just thrilled that we're able to get back to an in-person event. And I think that's a really key part of our International Women's Day celebrations. The last couple of years, COVID has been COVID, and we still got together. We still, made a big deal of it, but, we're, on computer monitors, and we were, taking part that way. So being able to be in person and to see our sisters and to see women and coming together is just phenomenal. So we're so excited about that. March the 8th is our big day. We've got our women's empowerment luncheon, which is going to be at Barrie Chrysler this year. The last time we were live in person, we were at their beautiful showroom, and they've graciously offered it again. So we're going to be back there. We have a wonderful lunch planned. There's going to be a little bit of shopping, which is great, a vendor fair. We're going to have a wonderful lunch. And Jane Pritchard, who has been on CTV Barrie for many years, she just retired recently, but she's going to be our keynote speaker, and she's going to talk about her journey, her personal journey, and the brand new book that she has out as well. So that's great. That's just the first part. We're only getting started. Then later on in the evening, we are going to meet at City Hall in Barrie. We have got our annual Women's March. We take to the streets together safely and empower each other, and we will walk around right from Barrie City Hall down around and back up again. So it's going to be a wonderful night. So that's 5 till 6 that evening, and we'll have signs, and we're going to have pussycat hats for the Me Too movement, and it's just going to be a wonderful event. First part, second part, all we need are women. And of course, for the March, which I love, is that it's a real celebration of women. And that's a chance for us to come together, everybody that, the women you care about in your life. So whether that's your wife or your daughters or your sisters and your mothers, everybody, it's a chance for that March to come together and celebrate the women in our lives.
That's great, Deb. And of course, for the March, we love men, women, children, organizations, businesses to come out and walk with us. It takes the voice of everyone in the community to create opportunity, equal opportunity that is gender equitable. And so we'd love for folks to come out to the March. It's a free event. Of course, in the Women's Empowerment Lunch, you have to purchase a ticket, which you can look at barrieshelter.com to do that.
They're going fast, by the way.
Going fast. So please, if you get a chance, get on there to see if there's any tickets left. It's going to be a great discussion, conversations with Jane Pritchard. And we do hope to see our community come out and walk with us. We're going to be loud. We're going to be proud. We are going to walk arm in arm, and we're going to have some great music leading the way and revving us up. And we also have an accessible route. So if you are someone who has any kind of accessibility needs, we have a route for you that we are going to walk with you. And so circling back, Deb, if there is a young woman watching here today who's trying to figure out what is my career path going to be, what words of inspiration would you give to her?
You know what? Always be a good listener. I think this is just kind of general. When you're trying to figure out life, I tell this to a lot of people, even my own grandkids, but it's like, be a good listener. And it's just such a great skill because you never know what you're going to hear, never know what you're going to pick up. So with the good listening skills comes the questioning part. And I said, don't be afraid to question, always talk, always ask questions, always be asking of the world and around us. I think that's great advice as well. Try to find the positive in a world sometimes that's a little negative. Try to always find the positive and make room for failure.
Deb, thank you so much for being with us here today. It has been a pleasure to talk with you. And thank you to our viewers again for always coming alongside us. We hope that our discussion today just really helped to educate, inform, and challenge our thinking. Take care, everyone, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.